This is the official audiobook of the book. To access the ebook version, the link will be in the first pinned comment just below. Click and access. Chapter 1: A Contemplative Hook and Promise of Transformation. Picture water flowing down a mountainside, effortless, persistent, unstoppable. It doesn't fight the rocks in its path, it dances around them, sometimes pooling quietly, sometimes rushing forward, always finding its way. This water has taught me more about true strength than any warrior's manual ever could. I have walked this earth for many seasons, watching countless souls exhaust themselves in battles they need not fight. Today, I want to share with you an ancient secret that modern life has forgotten: the art of becoming unbeatable not through force, but through flow. You see, friend, when most people speak of being unbeatable, they imagine armor, weapons, rigid stance against the storms of life. But observe the bamboo during a typhoon. While mighty oaks crack and fall, the bamboo bends so completely it nearly touches the ground, then springs back, unbroken. This is the paradox I wish to explore with you, that our greatest strength emerges not from resistance, but from the wisdom of yielding. The water that never loses. In my years of contemplation, I have noticed that water embodies perfect invincibility. It conquers mountains not through violence, but through patience. It fills any container while maintaining its essential nature. When heated, it transforms but does not disappear. When frozen, it becomes strong enough to split stone, yet returns to gentleness when conditions change. This is what I mean when I speak of becoming unbeatable, not the brittle invincibility of steel, but the fluid mastery of water. When you learn to flow like water through the landscapes of your life, obstacles transform from enemies into dance partners. Challenges become opportunities to practice grace under pressure. The paradox of true strength. Here lies the beautiful contradiction that transforms lives. The moment you stop fighting life, life stops fighting you. The ancient masters understood this deeply. They discovered that surrender, conscious, intelligent surrender, opens doorways that force never could. Think of the last time you found yourself pushing against a situation that wouldn't budge. Perhaps it was a difficult conversation, a professional setback, or a relationship challenge. Remember how exhausting that resistance felt? Now imagine if, instead of pushing harder, you had paused to ask, how might I flow around this obstacle? What is this situation trying to teach me? Where is the hidden doorway? This shift from opposition to curiosity, from rigidity to responsiveness, marks the beginning of true invincibility. When you are no longer at war with what is, you discover energy you never knew you had. When you stop demanding that rivers flow uphill, you find extraordinary power in moving with their natural current. Your journey to inner invincibility. I make you this gentle promise: within these pages lies a different kind of strength, one that doesn't exhaust itself in battles but grows stronger through practice. You will discover a peace that doesn't depend on controlling circumstances, but flourishes precisely because it dances with change. You will uncover a wisdom that transforms every difficulty into a teacher, every setback into a setup for something more beautiful. This is not about becoming passive or weak. Water is not passive when it carves canyons or generates power for entire cities. This is about learning to apply your energy so efficiently, so harmoniously, that struggle becomes unnecessary. The bamboo that survives the storm. Throughout our journey together, I will return often to the image of bamboo, hollow at its core, flexible in its response, deeply rooted in its foundation. The bamboo teaches us that true strength combines emptiness with fullness, movement with stability, humility with resilience. Like bamboo, you can learn to bend without breaking, to remain hollow enough for wisdom to flow through you, to stand tall while staying humble. This metaphor will become your companion, reminding you that flexibility and strength are not opposites, but dance partners in the art of invincible living. 3 breaths to begin. Before we go further, let us plant the first seed of transformation together. Wherever you are reading this, take a moment to breathe deeply. On your first breath, notice where you feel tight, resistant, or braced against something in your life. Don't try to change it, simply observe with gentle curiosity. On your second breath, imagine yourself as water encountering that same situation. How might you flow around it, through it, or rest peacefully until the conditions shift? Feel the difference between pushing against and moving with. On your third breath, let yourself relax into the possibility that there might be an easier way, a path of less resistance that doesn't compromise your values or goals, but honors them more deeply. This simple practice, this moment of conscious breathing with awareness, is already transforming you. You've just experienced the first taste of Wu Wei, action without forcing, effectiveness without struggle. What you will discover. In the chapters that follow, we will walk together through landscapes of ancient wisdom made practical for modern life. You will learn to recognize the tired warrior within you who has been fighting unnecessary battles, and discover the natural ease that emerges when you align with life's deeper rhythms. We will explore how to apply water's wisdom in your work, your relationships, your health, and your daily routines. You will receive practical tools, contemplative practices, and gentle exercises that integrate seamlessly into your existing life while gradually transforming it from within. Through stories of others who have walked this path, through structured practices designed to awaken your natural flow, and through deep reflection on the timeless principles that govern all thriving life, you will discover that becoming unbeatable was never about winning every battle, it was about transcending the need to battle at all. Moments for reflection. As you close this opening chapter, consider, what battles in your life might actually be invitations to practice flowing? Where have you been trying to push rivers uphill when you could be moving with their current? How might your definition of strength be ready to evolve? Practice invitation. For the next day, simply notice moments when you feel yourself pushing against something, whether it's traffic, a difficult person, or your own resistance to a task. When you catch yourself in this pattern, take one conscious breath and ask, how might water move through this situation? Don't force any changes, simply cultivate this new awareness. This gentle observation is already the beginning of your transformation. The path of the Tao begins with a single step, taken not in haste towards some distant goal, but in presence, right here where your feet touch the ground. Welcome to your journey of becoming beautifully, effortlessly unbeatable. Chapter 2: The Tired Warrior, Recognizing Your Hidden Battles. I have walked this earth for many lifetimes, and in each one, I encounter the same beautiful, wounded souls. They carry themselves like warriors who have forgotten that the war is over, or perhaps, never truly understood what they were fighting for. Their shoulders bear invisible armor, their hearts beat with the rhythm of constant vigilance, and their eyes scan each horizon for the next challenge to overcome. Perhaps you recognize yourself in this mirror. If you've found your way to these words, chances are you've grown weary of swimming against currents that seem to grow stronger with each stroke. You've likely discovered that the strategies that once served you, the pushing, the striving, the relentless pursuit of control, now feel like chains around your ankles as you try to dance through life. The weight of always fighting. There's a particular exhaustion that comes from treating every moment as a battle to be won. I watch as people transform the simple act of waking into a conquest over sleep, breakfast into a victory over hunger, and commuting into a race against time. By evening, they collapse not from living, but from warring with life itself. This is the story of the tired warrior, someone who has learned to see every experience through the lens of opposition. Work becomes a battlefield where colleagues are competitors and deadlines are enemies to defeat. Relationships become negotiations where vulnerability equals weakness and love becomes a contest of who needs less. Even rest becomes another item to check off a list, another territory to conquer efficiently. The cruel irony is that this approach, born from a desire to feel secure and in control, creates the very uncertainty and chaos we seek to avoid. Like a person trying to steady themselves on water by pressing down harder, the more force we apply, the more turbulent our experience becomes. I remember speaking with a successful attorney once, someone who had built their entire identity around never losing an argument, never showing weakness, never accepting anything less than total victory. They came to me hollow-eyed and brittle, like a tree that had grown tall but forgotten to sink roots. "I've won every case that mattered," they whispered, "so why do I feel so defeated?" This is the paradox of the tired warrior. We exhaust ourselves fighting battles that don't need to be fought, defending against enemies that exist primarily in our imagination, and seeking victories in wars that victory itself cannot win. The armor that imprisons. Over years of struggling, we develop what we believe are protective strategies. We build walls around our hearts and call it boundaries. We rehearse conversations in our minds a dozen times and call it preparation. We try to predict and prevent every possible disappointment and call it wisdom. But these armors, crafted in moments of pain and fear, become prisons that separate us from the very experiences we most long for. The wall that keeps out hurt also keeps out love. The strategy that prevents disappointment also prevents surprise and delight. The control that feels so necessary becomes the cage that keeps us from flying. I think of a mother I once knew who tried to protect her children from every possible harm. She researched every playground, vetted every friend, scheduled every moment to ensure optimal outcomes. Her love was fierce and genuine, yet her children grew anxious and afraid, learning to see the world through her eyes of constant vigilance. The armor she built around her family became the very thing that taught them to fear the world she was trying to protect them from. This is how our protective strategies often work. They become self-fulfilling prophecies. We brace for rejection and our tension creates distance. We prepare for conflict and our defensiveness escalates neutral situations into battles. We grasp for security and our desperation repels the very stability we seek. The tragedy isn't that we develop these patterns, they often served us well in circumstances that truly required such vigilance. The tragedy is that we forgot they were temporary strategies and allowed them to become permanent identities. The race without a finish line. Modern life has convinced many of us that we're running a race, though no one seems quite sure where the finish line is supposed to be. We chase promotions that promise fulfillment but deliver only the next level of pressure. We pursue relationships that will finally make us feel complete, only to discover that incompleteness follows us into every connection. We accumulate possessions that were supposed to provide security but instead create new anxieties about protection and maintenance. This endless race is particularly exhausting because it's based on the false premise that satisfaction exists somewhere in the future, always just beyond our current circumstances. We tell ourselves stories: when I get the promotion, then I'll feel successful. When I find the right person, then I'll feel lovable. When I have enough money, then I'll feel secure. But I have watched countless people achieve these external markers only to discover that the feeling of enough doesn't arrive with the accomplishment. The goalposts simply move further away, and the race continues with even higher stakes. A businessman once shared with me his moment of recognition. He had worked 16-hour days for a decade, sacrificing relationships, health, and joy for the promise of eventual freedom. The day he reached his financial target, the number that was supposed to mean he had made it, he found himself immediately calculating how much more he would need to feel truly secure. I realized, he said, that there was no amount that would ever feel like enough, because the problem wasn't the amount, it was the hunger itself. This is the curse of seeking fulfillment through accumulation. The appetite grows with feeding. We mistake the temporary pleasure of acquisition for the permanent peace of sufficiency, not realizing that sufficiency is a way of seeing, not a number in a bank account or a list of achievements. When success becomes hollow. Perhaps most heartbreaking are those who have played the game exactly as they were told and won, only to discover that victory tastes like sawdust. They climbed the ladder only to find it was leaning against the wrong wall. They reached the mountain top only to realize they had no idea why they wanted to be there. This is the existential exhaustion of the successful but unfulfilled, people who have checking accounts full of money but souls running on empty. They've mastered the external game but lost connection with their internal compass. They know how to achieve but have forgotten how to receive. They can produce impressive results but have lost the ability to simply be present with what is. A renowned surgeon once described to me the moment she realized that despite her professional success, she felt more like a highly efficient machine than a human being. I could save lives, she said, but I couldn't save my own sense of aliveness. I had become so good at fixing others that I forgot what it felt like to be whole myself. This disconnect between outer success and inner fulfillment isn't a personal failing, it's a natural consequence of a culture that teaches us to measure our worth by our productivity rather than our presence, our achievements rather than our authenticity, our accumulations rather than our ability to appreciate what we already have. The loneliness of separation. One of the deepest wounds of the tired warrior is the profound loneliness that comes from feeling fundamentally separated from life itself. When we approach existence as something to be conquered rather than something to be experienced, we inevitably position ourselves as outsiders looking in, struggling to figure out how to win a game that was never meant to be competitive. This separation manifests in countless ways. We feel disconnected from our bodies, treating them like vehicles to be driven rather than homes to be inhabited. We feel disconnected from our emotions, seeing them as problems to be solved rather than messengers to be heard. We feel disconnected from others, relating through roles and strategies rather than authentic presence. Most fundamentally, we feel disconnected from the source of our own being, from that deep wellspring of peace and wisdom that is always available but somehow always seems just out of reach. A young mother once shared with me her experience of feeling lonely even while surrounded by family. I realized I was so busy managing everyone's needs and orchestrating everyone's happiness that I had forgotten how to simply be present with the people I love most. I was like a director watching my own life from behind a camera, trying to make everything perfect but never actually participating in the scene. This kind of loneliness isn't solved by having more people around or more activities to fill our time. It's the loneliness of the false self, the constructed identity that has become so elaborate and demanding that it has buried the simple, natural being that needs no improvement or achievement to be worthy of love. The whispered call for something different. But here's what gives me hope, what has given me hope through all the centuries I've watched human beings struggle and grow. There comes a moment in every tired warrior's journey when they hear it. A whisper. A gentle call. A quiet knowing that there must be another way. Sometimes it comes in moments of breakdown, when the old strategies finally stop working entirely. Sometimes it arrives in moments of unexpected grace, watching a sunset, holding a child, feeling the breath move in and out of the body, when we suddenly remember what it feels like to simply be alive without needing to accomplish anything. This call isn't dramatic or demanding. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or ultimatums. It's more like a gentle hand on the shoulder, a soft voice saying, "You can put the sword down now. The battle you've been fighting was never real. Come home." A corporate executive described this moment to me as the day I realized I was exhausted from pushing on doors that were meant to be pulled. I had been using all my strength in exactly the wrong direction, and the moment I stopped pushing and simply allowed the doors to open, everything became effortless. This whisper is your soul calling you back to yourself. It's the deepest part of your being reminding you that you are not a problem to be solved or a project to be completed. You are not broken and in need of fixing. You are not lacking and in need of more. You are a complete and perfect expression of life itself, temporarily caught in patterns of thinking that have convinced you otherwise. You are not broken. Before we go any further on this journey together, I want to offer you the most important truth I've learned in all my years of walking this earth. There is nothing wrong with you. Nothing to fix. Nothing to improve. Nothing to change before you can begin living fully. The patterns that exhaust you, the strategies that no longer serve, the armor that has become too heavy, these are not character flaws or personal failures. They are intelligent responses to difficult circumstances, survival strategies that once served a purpose, habits of thinking learned in a world that taught you that love must be earned, security must be grasped, and worth must be proven. You develop these patterns because you are intelligent and adaptive. You learn to fight because fighting seemed necessary. You learn to control because control seemed safer than vulnerability. You learn to strive because striving seemed like the path to acceptance and love. The invitation now isn't to judge these patterns or wage war against them. That would just be more fighting, more strategy, more effort. The invitation is to begin exploring what becomes possible when we set down the weapons we've been carrying and allow ourselves to experience life without the constant need to defend, achieve, or prove anything at all. A wise teacher once told me, the spiritual path isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been underneath all the ideas about who you thought you had to become. This remembering doesn't happen through more effort or better strategies. It happens through a kind of gentle undoing, or relaxing back into the natural flow of being that was always there, waiting patiently beneath all the struggle. Moments for reflection. Where in your life do you notice yourself treating simple experiences as battles to be won rather than moments to be lived? What armor, physical, emotional, or mental, have you been carrying that might now be heavier than the protection it provides? Can you recall a recent moment when you felt truly at peace, and what was present in that moment that's usually absent? A practice for this moment: set down whatever you're doing and take 3 conscious breaths. With the first breath, notice where you're holding tension in your body and let it soften. With the second breath, notice what you've been trying to figure out or control and let it be unsolved for now. With the third breath, notice the simple fact that you're alive, breathing, present in this moment, without needing to do anything to earn that presence. This is your natural state, not an achievement, but a recognition. As we move forward together, remember that this isn't about adding more to your life or becoming better at being human. It's about discovering what's already here when we stop working so hard to be somewhere else. The tired warrior in you has served faithfully and can finally rest. What emerges in that rest is what we'll explore together, the unshakable strength that comes not from fighting life, but from learning to dance with it. Foundations. I want to begin with something that happened to me just this morning, as dawn painted the horizon in gentle watercolors. I was sitting by the window, watching mist rise from a small pond, when a single leaf detached from an oak tree and began its descent. But here's what caught my attention: the leaf didn't fight the wind, didn't struggle against gravity, didn't attempt to control its path. Instead, it danced, sometimes swirling left, sometimes drifting right, always in perfect harmony with forces much greater than itself. In that moment, I saw the entire foundation of what I want to share with you in this chapter. The leaf embodied something that took me decades to truly understand: there exists a way of being that is both completely natural and utterly transformative. The ancient sages called it Tao, but names can become prisons, so let's experience it together instead. The Tao that cannot be named. Close your eyes for a moment and feel your heartbeat. You don't make it happen, yet it happens. Feel your breath moving in and out. You don't consciously orchestrate this miracle, yet here you are, breathing. Notice how your body knows exactly how to digest food, heal cuts, and dream at night, all without consulting your mind's endless strategies and plans. This intelligence that beats your heart and grows your hair and knows when to sleep, this is your first taste of what the ancients pointed to when they whispered about the Tao. It's not a concept to understand but a reality you're already swimming in, like a fish that suddenly realizes it's surrounded by water. The Tao is the invisible current that moves through all things. It's what turns winter into spring without effort, what guides migrating birds across thousands of miles without GPS, what orchestrates the dance of galaxies without a conductor. And here's the beautiful secret: it's the same force that can guide your life, if you learn to feel its rhythm. I remember when this first became real for me. I was facing what seemed like an impossible decision: whether to stay in a situation that was slowly suffocating my spirit or leap into complete uncertainty. My mind created elaborate pros and cons lists, consulted every friend, read every book on decision-making I could find. Nothing helped. I was trapped in paralysis by analysis. Then, during a particularly frustrating night of mental churning, I stepped outside and found myself watching clouds drift across the moon. The clouds didn't hesitate, didn't second-guess their movement. They simply flowed where the wind carried them, yet their movement was perfectly beautiful, perfectly appropriate. In that moment, something inside me relaxed, and suddenly I knew, not with my mind, but with my whole being, what my next step needed to be. This is the Tao in action, a knowing that emerges when we stop trying to figure everything out and start feeling our way into alignment with life's natural flow. Wu Wei, the action without effort. Now let me introduce you to perhaps the most misunderstood concept in all of Taoist wisdom: Wu Wei. Western minds often translate this as non-action and immediately picture someone sitting motionless, doing nothing. This misses the profound beauty entirely. Wu Wei doesn't mean inaction, it means acting without forcing, moving without struggling, being effective without being aggressive. Think of a master swimmer cutting through water with graceful strokes, or watch a cat leap from chair to counter in one fluid motion. This is Wu Wei, maximum effectiveness with minimum effort. I learned this lesson from my grandmother's garden. She had the most magnificent vegetables I'd ever seen, yet I rarely saw her working frantically in the soil. When I asked her secret, she smiled and said, "I don't grow vegetables. I create conditions where vegetables grow themselves. She planted at the right time, watered when needed, trusted the seasons. The garden flourished not because she controlled every detail, but because she aligned with natural processes. This is how Wu Wei works in human life. Instead of forcing doors open, we learn to recognize which doors are ready to swing wide with just a gentle push. Instead of swimming against every current, we learn to read the water and find the streams that carry us toward our destination. In your work life, this might mean speaking up in a meeting not because you plan to dominate, but because the conversation has created a natural opening where your perspective fits perfectly. In relationships, it might mean offering support not because you think you should, but because you feel genuine movement of care in your heart. Wu Wei requires something our culture rarely teaches, the ability to wait for the right moment and then act with complete commitment. Like an archer who draws the bow back patiently, breathes slowly, and then releases with perfect timing. Yin and Yang in movement. Every morning, I witness one of the most perfect demonstrations of Yin and Yang, sunrise. The soft, receptive darkness of night doesn't fight the approaching light. Instead, it gracefully yields, allowing dawn to emerge in all its golden glory. Then, 12 hours later, daylight doesn't cling desperately to the sky but yields to evening's gentle embrace. This is the eternal dance of complementary opposites. In your own life, you've experienced this dance countless times, though you may not have recognized it. Remember the deep satisfaction of rest after intense work? The sweetness of reconnection after time apart from a loved one? The way silence makes music more beautiful, or how contrast makes a photograph compelling. Yin and Yang aren't fighting each other, they're dancing together to create wholeness. Yin represents the receptive, the soft, the intuitive, the still. Yang represents the active, the firm, the logical, the moving. Neither is better than the other, both are essential. I see people in my community struggling because they've been taught that Yang qualities, ambition, action, achievement, are superior to Yin qualities, receptivity, reflection, being. This creates inner war. The ambitious executive who never allows herself to rest burns out. The naturally contemplative artist who forces himself into constant networking loses touch with his creative source. True invincibility comes from learning to dance fluidly between these energies. Sometimes your situation calls for Yang, clear boundaries, decisive action, strong leadership. Sometimes it calls for Yin, deep listening, patient waiting, gentle yielding. The wise person learns to sense which energy is needed when, like a sailor who reads wind patterns to know when to adjust the sails. In your relationships, this means sometimes being the rock of strength, Yang, and sometimes being the accepting space that allows others to unfold, Yin. In your work, it means balancing periods of intense focus with periods of open creativity, times of pushing forward with times of reflecting and integrating. The 5 elements within you. Let me share something beautiful I discovered during years of observing both nature and human nature. The same elements that create the external world also create our inner landscape. Traditional Chinese wisdom speaks of 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, not as mere substances, but as energetic patterns that flow through everything, including you. Wood energy is your growth and vision. Feel it in early morning when ideas sprout in your mind, when you're planning and expanding and reaching toward new possibilities. It's the entrepreneur's excitement, the parent's protective instinct, the artist's creative drive. When wood energy is balanced, you feel purposeful and flexible. When it's excessive, you become rigid and angry. When it's deficient, you lose direction and hope. Fire energy is your connection and joy. It sparkles in laughter shared with friends, in the warmth of intimate conversation, in moments when your heart feels wide open to life. Balanced fire energy makes you magnetic and compassionate. Too much fire creates anxiety and scattered attention. Too little fire leads to isolation and depression. Earth energy is your stability and nurturing. It's present when you're cooking a meal with love, when you're listening deeply to someone's concerns, when you're creating a safe, beautiful space in your home. Earth energy grounds you in the present moment and helps you care for yourself and others. Excessive earth energy can make you worry obsessively or become overly protective. Insufficient earth energy leaves you feeling rootless and anxious. Metal energy is your clarity and letting go. You feel it when you're organizing your space, setting healthy boundaries, or releasing what no longer serves you. It's the energy of autumn, beautiful, precise, and wise about what to keep and what to compost. Balanced metal energy gives you discernment and elegance. Too much makes you overly critical. Too little makes you unable to release what's holding you back. Water energy is your depth and wisdom. It flows in quiet contemplation, in your ability to adapt to changing circumstances, in the deep knowing that emerges from stillness. Water energy connects you to your deepest essence and gives you the courage to trust life's unfolding. Excessive water energy can make you fearful or overly withdrawn. Insufficient water energy leaves you feeling burned out and disconnected from your inner wisdom. Understanding these elements within yourself gives you a map for navigating life's complexities. Feeling scattered and anxious? You might need more earth energy, time in nature, nourishing food, grounding practices. Feeling stuck and uninspired? Perhaps wood energy is calling, time for visioning, planning, gentle movement. Feeling isolated? Fire energy wants attention, connection, creativity, celebration. Te, the power of natural virtue. There's a quality that some people carry that's impossible to fake and unmistakable when you encounter it. They're not trying to impress anyone, yet you feel drawn to them. They're not demanding attention, yet you find yourself listening carefully when they speak. They seem to accomplish things with an ease that makes you wonder what their secret is. This quality is called Te in Taoist wisdom, the power that emerges naturally when someone is aligned with their authentic essence. It's not charisma manufactured for effect, but magnetism that arises from living in harmony with your deepest nature. I once knew a janitor at a local school who embodied Te more than many famous leaders I've encountered. He knew every child's name, somehow always appeared when someone needed help, and had a way of making even the most mundane tasks feel meaningful. People, from kindergartners to the principal, sought his counsel. He wasn't trying to be influential, influence flowed through him because he was completely himself. Te develops not through adding more to who you are, but through removing what isn't truly you. It's like a sculptor revealing a beautiful form by carefully chipping away unnecessary stone. Every time you choose authenticity over approval, every time you respond from your genuine heart rather than social conditioning, every time you trust your inner wisdom over external pressure, you strengthen your Te. This power is available to you right now. You don't need to become someone else to access it. You need to become more of who you already are beneath the layers of shoulds and musts and have tos that may have accumulated over the years. The simplicity that transcends complexity. In our world of endless options, infinite information, and constant connectivity, there's profound power in returning to simplicity. Not the simplicity of ignorance, but the simplicity that emerges on the other side of complexity, what the Taoists called Pu, the uncarved block. Think of a child who hasn't yet learned that happiness requires specific circumstances. They find delight in cardboard boxes, fascination in puddles, contentment in simple presence. They haven't forgotten what we adults often lose, the recognition that life itself, before we complicate it with stories and strategies, is already whole and complete. This doesn't mean becoming naive or abandoning discernment. It means learning to distinguish between complexity that serves life and complexity that serves anxiety. The wise person can navigate sophisticated situations while remaining anchored in simple truths, treat others with kindness, stay present to what's actually happening, trust the basic goodness of existence. I practice this daily by asking myself, what's the simplest response to this situation? Often, my mind wants to create elaborate plans and consider dozens of variables. But when I pause and feel into the moment, the appropriate action is usually surprisingly straightforward. Xiren, natural spontaneity. The last foundation I want to share with you is perhaps the most liberating, Xiren, which means spontaneity that arises from your natural essence. This isn't impulsiveness or reactive behavior, but the capacity to respond freshly to each moment without being imprisoned by past patterns or future expectations. Watch a cat encountering a butterfly. It doesn't consult a manual on butterfly chasing techniques or worry about whether it's approaching correctly. It simply follows its natural response with complete presence and engagement. This is Xiren. For humans, developing Ziran means gradually releasing the tight grip of control and learning to trust the wisdom that emerges when we're fully present. It's the perfect word that comes to you in conversation, the creative solution that appears when you stop struggling with a problem, the gesture of kindness that flows spontaneously from your heart. I remember a time when everything in my life felt scripted, as if I were performing someone else's idea of who I should be. Developing Ziran was like learning to improvise after years of only reading from sheet music. Scary at first, but ultimately far more alive and creative. Bringing it all together. These foundations, the nameless Tao, Wu Wei, Yin Yang, the 5 elements, Te, simplicity, and spontaneity, aren't separate concepts to master one by one. They're different facets of a single gem, the art of living in harmony with life itself. As you move through your days, you'll begin to notice opportunities to practice each of these. A difficult conversation becomes a chance to embody Wu Wei. A decision point becomes an opportunity to sense whether yin or yang energy is called for. A moment of overwhelm becomes an invitation to return to simplicity. The goal isn't perfection but awareness. Each time you recognize a chance to align with these natural principles, you strengthen your capacity for unshakable presence. Each time you choose flow over force, balance over extremes, authenticity over performance, you become more invincible, not because you're harder, but because you're more flexible, not because you're stronger, but because you're more aligned with the source of all strength. Moments for reflection. Take a moment now to feel your breath moving without your control. Can you sense the intelligence that orchestrates this miracle? This is your direct connection to the Tao, not an idea, but a living reality you can return to any time. Think of a time when you accomplished something important with relative ease, when action felt effortless and effective. What was different about your state of being in that moment? This is your personal experience of Wu Wei. Notice right now, are you in a more yang state, active, focused, directive, or a yin state, receptive, reflective, yielding? Neither is wrong, but awareness gives you choice about whether to shift or stay where you are. Practice for daily life. For the next 3 days, I invite you to practice what I call the pause of recognition. Several times each day, stop for just 10 seconds and ask yourself, am I forcing this moment, or am I flowing with it? Don't judge what you discover, simply notice. This tiny practice begins to awaken your sensitivity to the difference between swimming with the current and swimming against it. When you notice you're forcing, pushing against resistance, tensing unnecessarily, trying to control what can't be controlled, take one conscious breath and soften just 5%. Not dramatic change, just a gentle shift toward cooperation with what's actually happening. This simple practice, repeated consistently, begins to rewire your nervous system's default responses. Instead of meeting every challenge with contraction and effort, you gradually develop the capacity to meet life with intelligent responsiveness. This is where your journey toward true invincibility begins, not in becoming harder, but in becoming wiser about when to yield and when to stand firm, when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to listen. The foundations are now laid. In the chapters that follow, we'll build upon these natural principles, discovering how they transform every aspect of daily life into opportunities for deepening wisdom and unshakable peace. But for now, simply let these concepts settle into your being like seeds planted in fertile soil, trusting that understanding will grow naturally as we continue together. Principles in action, living the Tao in every moment. The morning sun filters through my study window as I write these words, and I find myself thinking of a conversation I had with a CEO last autumn. She sat across from me, shoulders rigid with the weight of constant decisions, and asked, "How can I apply this ancient wisdom when I'm drowning in quarterly reports and board meetings?" Her question echoes the heart of what we explore together in this chapter, how the timeless principles of the Tao become our most practical guides in navigating the complexities of modern life. You see, the Tao is not something we practice only in moments of meditation or quiet contemplation. It is the very fabric of existence, which means it must weave itself through every aspect of our daily experience, our work, our relationships, our approach to money, health, creativity, and even the sacred responsibility of guiding the next generation. The strength of water in your professional life. Watch water encountering a boulder in a stream. It doesn't rage against the obstacle or exhaust itself in futile opposition. Instead, it finds the path of least resistance, flowing around, under, sometimes even through tiny cracks, eventually wearing down even the hardest stone. This is the essence of Wu Wei in your professional world, not passive acceptance, but intelligent responsiveness. I remember working with a project manager who was constantly battling resistance from his team. Every meeting became a battlefield, every deadline a source of stress. "I feel like I'm pushing a river uphill," he told me, unknowingly describing the very source of his struggle. Together, we began to explore what it might look like to work with the natural currents of his workplace rather than against them. The transformation began with a simple shift in his morning routine. Instead of arriving at the office with a rigid agenda, he started each day with 3 conscious breaths, asking himself, "What wants to emerge today?" This small practice opened a space for sensitivity to the subtle energies of his team, the natural rhythms of creativity and productivity, the unspoken needs that often drive resistance. Within weeks, his approach had fundamentally changed. Rather than imposing solutions, he began asking questions that allowed solutions to surface naturally. Instead of demanding compliance, he created conditions where cooperation could flourish. His team meetings transformed from tense negotiations into collaborative explorations. The principle here is what I call persistent flexibility, maintaining clarity about your ultimate destination while remaining completely adaptable about the path. Like water, you keep moving toward your goal, but you're willing to take any route that opens up, even if it seems longer or more indirect. Consider how this might apply to your own work challenges. When you encounter resistance, from colleagues, systems, or circumstances, pause and feel into the situation. Where is the natural opening? What wants to happen? How can you align your efforts with the existing flow of energy rather than creating friction? Moment of reflection. Think of a current work situation where you're experiencing resistance. Can you sense the difference between pushing against this resistance and finding a way to flow around it? What might persistent flexibility look like in this specific context? Moment of reflection. Notice how your body feels when you imagine forcing a solution versus allowing one to emerge. The Tao often speaks to us through these subtle physical sensations before our minds catch up. Practice. Tomorrow, begin one meeting or work conversation by asking, "What wants to emerge here?" instead of immediately presenting your agenda. Notice how this question changes the quality of engagement and the solutions that arise. Leadership as empty as the valley. There's a profound paradox at the heart of effective leadership that modern management theory is only beginning to understand, yet the ancient Taoists knew it intimately. The most powerful leaders are those who lead like empty valleys, providing space for others to flourish rather than demanding attention for themselves. A valley doesn't try to be impressive. It doesn't demand recognition or credit. Yet it becomes the gathering place for streams, the fertile ground where life congregates and thrives. This is the essence of Taoist leadership, creating conditions where the best in others naturally emerges. I once worked with a department head who was struggling with what she called unmotivated employees. She felt constantly drained by the need to micromanage, to push and prod her team toward productivity. "They won't do anything unless I'm standing over them," she complained, not realizing that her very presence was creating the dependency she resented. We began exploring what she called leadership through disappearing. This didn't mean abandoning her responsibilities, but rather shifting from being the center of attention to being the space within which her team could discover their own motivation and capability. The process started with her learning to ask different questions. Instead of "Why isn't this done yet?" she began asking, "What support do you need to complete this?" Instead of providing answers, she started reflecting questions back. "What do you think would work best here?" Instead of solving problems for her team, she created space for them to discover their own solutions. The transformation was remarkable. As she learned to lead through spaciousness rather than control, her team began to step into their own power. Creativity increased, initiative flourished, and the very motivation problems she had been fighting against simply dissolved. This approach requires what I call confident emptiness, the strength to trust that when you create the right conditions, what needs to happen will happen. It's like tending a garden. You don't make the plants grow, you create the conditions where growth naturally occurs. In practical terms, this means becoming more interested in the questions you ask than the answers you give. It means creating space in meetings for silence, for reflection, for ideas to gestate. It means trusting your team's wisdom even when, especially when, it differs from your initial impulse. Moment of reflection. Think about your own leadership style, whether formal or informal. Do you tend to fill space with your presence and ideas, or do you create space for others to emerge? How might your influence actually increase by taking up less room? Moment of reflection. Consider someone who has had a powerful positive influence on your life. Did they lead you through force or through creating space for you to discover your own path? Practice. In your next leadership opportunity, whether leading a project, facilitating a discussion, or guiding a family decision, experiment with asking one more question instead of giving one more answer. Notice what emerges in the space you create. Relationships as rivers finding their way. The morning mist rises from a lake outside my window, reminding me of the delicate dance between two rivers as they converge, sometimes flowing smoothly together, sometimes creating turbulence before finding their new, combined rhythm. This is the perfect metaphor for conscious relationships lived in accordance with Taoist principles. Most of us approach relationships with unconscious assumptions about how they should flow. We have expectations, strategies, protective mechanisms built from past hurts and future fears. But the Tao invites us into something far more mysterious and ultimately satisfying: relationships as dynamic systems where two unique expressions of life learn to dance together. I think of a couple I worked with who came to me after 15 years of marriage, feeling like strangers living in the same house. They had fallen into patterns of defensive communication, each trying to control the other's behavior, each frustrated by the other's resistance to change. "We used to flow together so naturally," she said wistfully. "Now everything feels like a negotiation or a battle." The path back to flow began with what I call the practice of curious non-resistance. Instead of immediately defending against her partner's complaints or trying to fix his moods, she began to approach their interactions with genuine curiosity. What is he really asking for beneath this criticism? What fear or need is driving this behavior? How can I respond to the deeper current rather than just the surface turbulence? Similarly, he learned to receive her emotions without immediately trying to solve them or shut them down. When she was upset, instead of going into defensive mode or problem-solving mode, he practiced simply being present with her experience, trusting that emotions, like weather systems, have their own natural rhythms of arising and passing. This doesn't mean becoming passive or losing your authentic voice. Rather, it's learning to express your truth from a place of connection rather than separation, to set boundaries from love rather than fear, to navigate conflict as an opportunity for deeper understanding rather than a threat to be defended against. The key principle is what I call wu-wei intimacy, learning to act within relationships from your deepest wisdom rather than your quickest reactions. This means developing the capacity to pause, to feel into what's really happening beyond the surface drama, and to respond from your most centered self. In practical terms, this might mean taking 3 conscious breaths before responding to a partner's challenging comment. It might mean asking, "What does love want to do here?" before making decisions that affect others. It might mean being willing to apologize not just for your actions but for the energy you brought to the interaction. Moment of reflection. Consider a relationship in your life where you find yourself frequently in resistance or conflict. Can you sense the difference between defending your position and staying open to what wants to emerge between you? Moment of reflection. Think about a time when you felt truly seen and accepted by another person. What qualities did they bring to the interaction that created that sense of safety and connection? Practice. Choose one important relationship and experiment with this approach, for 1 week, before responding to any challenging communication from this person. Pause and silently ask, what are they really asking for? Let your response come from that deeper understanding rather than the surface content of their words. The economics of enough. As dawn breaks over the mountains, I'm reminded of how nature demonstrates perfect abundance without waste, perfect sufficiency without excess. Every system in the natural world operates on principles of enough. Trees grow to their perfect size, rivers flow with the water they have, seasons change in their perfect timing. Yet we humans have somehow convinced ourselves that more is always better, that accumulation equals security, that financial worth determines personal worth. The Taoist approach to money and material resources is radically different from both poverty consciousness and wealth obsession. It's what I call the middle stream, flowing in right relationship with abundance while remaining unattached to outcomes. I remember a successful attorney who came to me feeling trapped by his own success. "I have everything I thought I wanted," he said, "but I can't stop working. I can't relax. I keep thinking I need more clients, more recognition, more security. When is it enough?" His question points to the heart of financial anxiety in our culture. We've lost touch with the natural sense of sufficiency that comes from being aligned with our authentic needs rather than manufactured desires. The transformation began with what we called gratitude economics, a daily practice of acknowledging the abundance already flowing in his life. Not just financial abundance, but the wealth of breath in his lungs, sunlight streaming through his windows, the gift of clean water from his tap, the miracle of his body's constant healing and regeneration. This wasn't positive thinking or denial of real financial responsibilities. Rather, it was cultivation of the inner sense of abundance that allows us to make financial decisions from wisdom rather than fear, from sufficiency rather than scarcity. As his practice deepened, his relationship with money began to transform. He started making decisions based on what brought genuine fulfillment rather than just what paid well. He began to see money as energy, something meant to flow rather than be hoarded, something that increases when it moves in alignment with our deeper values. The principle here is circular abundance, understanding that we receive in proportion to how freely we give, not in a mechanical quid pro quo way, but because generosity opens us to the natural flow of life's abundance. This doesn't mean being financially irresponsible or giving away money you need for genuine security. Rather, it means developing the sensitivity to distinguish between authentic needs and compulsive wants, between true security and the illusion of control that comes from accumulation. Moment of reflection: can you feel the difference in your body between wanting something from a place of genuine need versus wanting it from a compulsive sense of never enough? How might your financial decisions change if they came from the first place rather than the second? Moment of reflection: consider what enough might actually look like in your life. What would you need to feel genuinely secure and content? How different is this from what you currently think you need? Practice. For 1 week, before making any non-essential purchase, pause and ask yourself, am I buying this from abundance or scarcity? Will this purchase increase my sense of sufficiency or feed my sense of lack? Notice how this question affects both your spending and your relationship with desire itself. Health is natural harmony. The gentle rhythm of waves against the shore reminds me that health, in the Taoist understanding, is not the absence of illness but the presence of dynamic harmony, the natural flow of energy through all the systems of our being. Just as nature maintains balance through constant subtle adjustments, our bodies possess an innate wisdom that knows how to heal, regenerate, and find equilibrium when we learn to listen and cooperate. Most of us have been conditioned to see our bodies as machines that occasionally break down and need fixing. But the Taoist perspective invites us into relationship with our physical being as a wise teacher, constantly communicating what it needs for optimal vitality and balance. I think of a client who came to me exhausted by chronic health issues that modern medicine couldn't quite solve. She had been to specialists, tried numerous treatments, but continued to struggle with fatigue, digestive problems, and a general sense of disconnection from her own body. "I feel like my body is working against me," she said, unknowingly describing the very source of her imbalance. We began exploring what it might mean to work with her body's wisdom rather than trying to override or control it. The journey started with what we called body listening meditation, simple practices of tuning into the subtle messages her body was constantly sending. What did fatigue really feel like in her system? What was her digestion actually asking for? How did different emotions register as physical sensations? As her sensitivity increased, she began to notice patterns. Her energy naturally fluctuated in rhythms that didn't match her forced schedule. Her digestive system had preferences that she had been ignoring. Her sleep patterns wanted to align more closely with natural light cycles. Gradually, she began making small adjustments, eating when hungry rather than on rigid schedules, resting when tired rather than pushing through, moving in ways that felt nourishing rather than punishing. She started treating her body as a trusted advisor rather than a rebellious servant. The principle here is what I call collaborative wellness, understanding that optimal health emerges from the partnership between conscious attention and bodily wisdom. This means learning to distinguish between the stories our minds tell about our bodies and the direct communication coming from our physical being. In practical terms, this might mean eating with full presence, noticing how different foods affect your energy and mood. It might mean moving in ways that bring joy rather than just burning calories. It might mean honoring your natural sleep rhythms instead of forcing yourself into artificial schedules. Moment of reflection. Take a moment to tune into your body right now. What is it telling you that you might usually ignore? What small adjustment would bring more comfort or vitality in this moment? Moment of reflection. Think about a time when you felt truly healthy and vital. What conditions supported that state? How are you treating your body differently than you might be now? Practice. Choose one daily activity, eating a meal, taking a shower, or walking, and practice doing it with complete presence to the physical sensations. Let your body guide the pace and rhythm rather than rushing through on automatic pilot. Notice what you discover about your body's preferences and wisdom. Creativity is an open channel. The blank canvas before me this morning reminds me of the profound teaching hidden in emptiness, how the most fertile creative moments emerge not when we're full of ideas, but when we're empty enough for something new to move through us. This is perhaps one of the most misunderstood aspects of the creative process in our culture of forcing and producing. We've been taught to think of creativity as something we do, something we generate through effort and technique. But the Taoist understanding reveals creativity as something we allow, something that flows through us when we create the right conditions of receptivity and openness. I remember working with a writer who had been struggling with creative block for months. She sat at her computer every day, forcing herself to produce words, but everything felt flat, mechanical, uninspired. I used to love writing, she said, but now it feels like pushing mud uphill. The solution didn't come through techniques or strategies, but through what we called creative Wu Wei, learning to trust the natural rhythm of inspiration and expression rather than trying to manufacture it. We began with practices of creative emptying, meditation, walking in nature, simply sitting with the blank page without pressure to fill it. At first, this felt uncomfortable to her. She was so used to striving that emptiness felt like laziness. But gradually, she began to sense something stirring in the spaciousness. Ideas started coming not during her designated writing times, but in moments of relaxation, while washing dishes, taking showers, lying in bed just before sleep. She learned to keep a notebook nearby and jot down these gifts without trying to develop them immediately. When she did sit down to write, instead of forcing predetermined outcomes, she began each session by asking, "What wants to be written today?" Then she would write the first sentence that came to her and follow where it led, trusting the intelligence that was moving through her rather than the intelligence that tried to control the process. The transformation was remarkable. Her writing became more alive, more authentic, more surprising, even to her. She had learned to become what I call a clear channel, present enough to receive inspiration and skilled enough to give it form. This principle applies far beyond traditional artistic endeavors. Every moment of genuine problem-solving, every authentic conversation, every moment of parenting or teaching or leading, these are all creative acts that benefit from this same quality of open receptivity. Moment of reflection. Think about your own relationship with creativity, whether in art, work, or daily life. Do you tend to force solutions and ideas, or do you create space for them to emerge naturally? What might change if you trusted the creative intelligence that wants to flow through you? Moment of reflection. Recall a time when you surprised yourself with a creative solution or expression that seemed to come from beyond your usual thinking. What conditions allowed that breakthrough to occur? Practice. Choose one creative project or challenge you're working on. Instead of immediately trying to solve it, spend 10 minutes in receptive stillness, walking, sitting quietly, or doing simple physical activity without mental agenda. Then ask the situation, what wants to emerge, and write down whatever comes without editing or judgment. Parenting from the place of trust. As I watch the oak tree outside my window providing shelter and space for birds to nest while trusting them to learn to fly, I'm reminded of perhaps the most challenging application of Taoist principles, guiding the next generation. Parenting from the Tao requires the delicate balance of providing structure while allowing natural unfolding, offering guidance while trusting innate wisdom, protecting while encouraging independence. Most of us parent from our own fears and unhealed places, trying to control outcomes we cannot control, projecting our dreams and anxieties onto beings who have their own unique paths to walk. But the Tao invites us into something far more mysterious and ultimately liberating, parenting as a practice of unconditional love combined with wise non-attachment. I think of a mother who came to me overwhelmed by her teenage daughter's choices. "She's not living up to her potential," she said, "and I don't know how to make her care about her future." Her anguish was genuine, her love unquestionable, but she was exhausting herself trying to push the river of her daughter's development. The transformation began with what we called sunlight parenting, providing consistent warmth and illumination while trusting the natural intelligence within her daughter to grow toward wholeness in her own unique way. This didn't mean becoming permissive or abandoning her parental responsibilities. Rather, it meant learning to distinguish between authentic guidance and anxious control, between loving boundaries and fearful restrictions. She began practicing what I call trust with presence, staying deeply connected to her daughter while releasing attachment to specific outcomes. Instead of lectures about grades and college plans, she started asking questions about her daughter's dreams and fears. Instead of solving problems for her, she created space for her daughter to discover her own solutions. The shift was subtle but profound. As she learned to trust her daughter's inherent wisdom, her daughter began to trust it too. As she stopped pushing so hard against her daughter's choices, her daughter became more open to receiving guidance. As she relaxed her grip on outcomes, their relationship became a source of joy rather than stress. The key principle here is unconditional positive regard combined with clear boundaries, loving the child exactly as they are while maintaining the structure they need to feel safe as they grow. Moment of reflection: whether or not you're a parent, consider how you might apply these principles to any relationship where you have influence over someone's growth, as a teacher, mentor, manager, or friend. What would change if you trusted their innate wisdom more and your need to control less? Moment of reflection: think about the adults who most positively influenced your own development. Did they try to mold you into their vision of who you should be, or did they help you discover who you already were? Practice. With any young person in your life, practice sunlight presence for 1 week, offering consistent warmth and availability while asking more questions than you give advice, creating more space than you fill with your agenda. As the sun reaches its peak and illuminates everything with equal grace, the struggling seedling and the mighty oak, the smooth stone and the jagged cliff, I'm reminded that these principles we've explored are not techniques to be perfected but ways of being to be embodied, again and again, in each new moment. The profound beauty of living these teachings is that they transform not just our external circumstances but our inner landscape. When we learn to flow like water in our work, we discover a source of energy that doesn't deplete. When we lead like an empty valley, we find our influence naturally expanding. When we approach relationships and resources and health and creativity from the place of trust and presence, we align ourselves with the very forces that create and sustain life itself. In our next chapter, we'll explore specific daily practices that help these principles become not just beautiful ideas but lived realities woven into the fabric of your ordinary days. For now, rest in knowing that every moment offers a fresh opportunity to choose flow over force, trust over control, presence over anxiety. The way is always available. The path is always beneath your feet. The Tao is always calling you home to yourself. Chapter 5: Daily Practices. The morning light filters through my window as I write these words, and I'm reminded of how the sun doesn't force its way into the world. It simply rises, naturally and inevitably, bringing illumination to everything it touches. This is the essence of what I want to share with you about daily practice, not as something you must impose upon your life, but as a natural arising of your deeper wisdom. When people ask me about spiritual practice, they often expect complicated rituals or hours of meditation. But the Tao is found in the simple, the immediate, the already present. It flows through your morning coffee, your evening walk, the way you breathe without thinking. What we're doing together is not adding something foreign to your life, but awakening to the sacred that has always been there, hidden in plain sight. I think of the ancient farmers who lived by the rhythm of seasons, who didn't separate their spiritual life from their daily work. They understood something we've forgotten in our rush toward complexity, that enlightenment blooms in ordinary moments, like wildflowers growing through cracks in concrete. The practices I'm about to share aren't meant to be another burden on your already full schedule, they're invitations to transform the schedule you already have. The meditation of natural breathing. Let me begin with the foundation of all Taoists' practices, the breath that's already breathing you. Right now, as you read these words, your body is engaged in an ancient conversation with the universe. Air enters, nourishes every cell, and returns enriched to the world. This isn't something you're doing, it's something that's being done through you, by the same force that moves the tides and turns the earth. The meditation of natural breathing isn't about controlling your breath, but about becoming intimate with this miraculous process that sustains your life. Find a comfortable position. It could be sitting in your favorite chair, lying in bed, or even standing by a window. There's no special posture required, no perfect setup. The Tao doesn't need ceremony, it needs presence. Close your eyes if that feels natural, or soften your gaze if keeping them open feels better. Begin to notice your breath without changing it. Feel the cool air as it enters your nostrils, the slight pause before exhale, the warm air as it leaves your body. Don't try to breathe deeply or slowly, just breathe naturally, like a sleeping child who knows nothing of meditation but everything of surrender. As you continue, you might notice your mind wanting to improve your breathing, to make it better or different. This is the controlling mind that we're so familiar with, always trying to optimize and fix. When you notice this, smile gently and return to simply witnessing. The breath knows how to breathe you, your job is simply to be present for this intimate miracle. Sometimes your breath will be shallow, sometimes deep. Sometimes smooth, sometimes irregular. All of this is perfect, because you're learning to trust the wisdom that operates your body without your conscious intervention. This is Wu Wei in its purest form, action without forcing, presence without controlling. As you develop this practice, you'll discover that your breath becomes an anchor, a way of returning to the present moment no matter what chaos surrounds you. In a difficult conversation, you can return to your breath. Stuck in traffic, you can return to your breath. Overwhelmed by decisions, you can return to your breath. It's always available, always present, always willing to remind you that you are held by forces much larger and wiser than your worried mind. Take a moment to reflect. What does it feel like to trust your body's wisdom rather than trying to control it? How might this trust extend into other areas of your life? Notice right now, where in your daily life do you find yourself holding your breath or breathing shallowly? What situations trigger this response? Consider this: if your breath is a teacher, what is it trying to show you about the rhythm of receiving and releasing? Here's your first practice invitation. For the next 7 days, set a gentle reminder to pause 3 times during your day, perhaps when you first wake up, during lunch, and before sleep. For just 2 minutes each time, simply be present with your natural breathing. Don't evaluate or judge, just witness. Notice how this simple practice begins to create small islands of peace in your day. The art of contemplative walking. There's something profound that happens when we allow our feet to touch the earth with awareness, when we transform the simple act of moving from one place to another into a meditation in motion. I've spent countless hours walking the paths near my home, and I've come to understand that walking can be one of our most powerful teachers about flow, rhythm, and trust. Most of us walk unconsciously, our minds racing ahead to our destination, our bodies merely vehicles for getting there. But contemplative walking invites us into a different relationship with movement, one where the journey becomes as important as the arrival, where each step is an opportunity to practice presence. You don't need a mountain path or a forest trail for this practice, though nature certainly amplifies its benefits. You can walk contemplatively in your neighborhood, around your office building, even in the hallways of your home. What matters isn't where you walk, but how you walk, with awareness, intention, and openness to what each moment offers. Begin by standing still for a moment before you start walking. Feel your feet making contact with the ground, sense the stability that the earth offers you. Notice how your body naturally knows how to balance, how to distribute weight, how to prepare for movement. This is ancient wisdom, coded into your bones and muscles over millions of years of human walking. As you take your first step, pay attention to the shift of weight from one foot to the other. Feel the lifting of your heel, the rolling forward onto your toes, the moment of transition where one foot releases its hold on the earth while the other receives it. This is the dance of yin and yang in its most basic form, the constant interplay of holding and releasing, stability and movement. Let your pace be slower than usual, not because slow is better, but because it allows you to be present for the intricate choreography of walking. Notice how your arms naturally swing to balance your movement, how your breathing adjusts to your rhythm, how your eyes naturally scan the environment while your body maintains its forward momentum. You are a walking ecosystem of coordinated intelligence, and most of the time you're completely unaware of this miracle. As you continue walking, expand your awareness to include your surroundings. Notice the quality of light, the temperature of air on your skin, the sounds that arise and fade away. See if you can walk without agenda, without the need to get anywhere quickly, without the internal commentary about what you should be doing instead. This is practicing Wu Wei in motion, moving with purpose but without forcing, progressing without rushing. You might find that contemplative walking naturally adjusts your internal rhythm. The steady pace of your feet on the ground can slow down a racing mind, while the gentle movement can energize a sluggish body. This is the self-regulating wisdom of the body in action, always seeking balance when we give it space to do so. Pause and reflect. When was the last time you walked somewhere without rushing or distraction? What did you notice about that experience? Consider this question: how does your relationship with walking mirror your relationship with life's journey itself? Notice today, what happens to your stress levels when you consciously slow down your physical movement? Your practice invitation: choose one walk you take regularly, perhaps from your car to your office, or around your block in the evening, and for the next week, transform it into contemplative walking. Walk 25% slower than usual, breathe naturally, and practice being fully present for the experience of moving through space. Notice what shifts in your day when you approach even this simple activity as a meditation. The sacred ritual of water. Water has been my greatest teacher in understanding the principles of the Tao. It seeks the lowest places that others avoid, yet nothing is stronger in persistence. It yields to every obstacle, yet eventually carves grand canyons. It takes the shape of whatever contains it, yet maintains its essential nature. In water, we find the perfect example of invincible flexibility. The beautiful thing about water as a spiritual teacher is that we encounter it constantly throughout our day. Every time you drink, wash, bathe, or even see rain on a window, you have an opportunity to remember and embody the wisdom of water. These aren't new activities to add to your schedule, they're invitations to transform activities you're already doing into moments of conscious connection with the Tao. Let's begin with the simple act of drinking water, something you do multiple times each day without much thought. The next time you reach for water, pause before you drink. Look at it for a moment, this clear, odorless, tasteless substance that makes up most of your body and is essential for every function of life. Hold the glass and feel its weight. Notice the temperature, observe how the light passes through it. As you bring the water to your lips, consider its journey. It may have fallen as rain on a mountain, flowed through streams and rivers, been purified and treated, traveled through pipes to reach you. In a very real sense, you're about to take in the clouds, the sky, the earth itself. This isn't poetry, it's science and spirituality converging in a single sip. Drink slowly, consciously. Feel the water entering your mouth, taste its subtle flavor, notice the sensation as it travels down your throat. Imagine it reaching your stomach, being absorbed into your bloodstream, traveling to every cell in your body. You are literally being nourished by the same substance that fills the oceans and carves the valleys. For this moment, you are consciously participating in the endless circulation of water that connects all life on Earth. This practice of conscious drinking can become a regular reminder throughout your day to pause, appreciate, and connect with the fundamental forces that sustain you. It transforms a basic biological necessity into a moment of meditation, a gentle return to presence and gratitude. The practice extends beautifully to washing your hands, your face, your body in the shower. Instead of rushing through these activities while your mind plans the next task, use them as opportunities to embody water's teachings about cleansing and renewal. Feel the water's temperature on your skin, notice how it adapts to the contours of your body, observe how it carries away not just physical dirt but can seem to wash away mental fatigue as well. In the shower, you can practice what I call water meditation. Stand under the flowing water and imagine it washing away more than just the day's accumulation of dust and sweat. Visualize it carrying away tension, worry, anger, frustration, all the mental and emotional debris that doesn't serve you. Let the water remind you that everything flows, nothing stagnates permanently, and renewal is always possible. Even watching rain through a window can become a practice. Notice how raindrops don't struggle against gravity, they simply follow their natural path downward. Observe how rain doesn't discriminate, it falls on flowers and weeds alike, on rich and poor neighborhoods equally. See how it nourishes everything it touches without judgment or reservation. These are not metaphors but direct teachings about how to move through life with grace. Reflect on this. How does water's example of taking the shape of its container while maintaining its essence apply to your ability to adapt without losing yourself? Consider, what would change in your daily experience if you approached obstacles the way water approaches rocks, not by fighting them but by finding a way around or through? Notice today, where in your life are you trying to push uphill when water's wisdom might suggest finding a different path? Your practice invitation: for the next 10 days, choose one daily water activity, drinking your morning glass of water, washing your hands before meals, or your evening shower, and transform it into a conscious practice. Use this time to embody water's qualities of flexibility, persistence, and naturalness. Notice how these small moments of conscious connection begin to influence your approach to the rest of your day. Conscious eating is spiritual practice. There's a profound spiritual truth hidden in the simple act of eating, one that most of us miss in our hurried consumption of fuel for our bodies. Every meal is actually a communion with the earth, a direct participation in the endless cycle of transformation that sustains all life. When we eat consciously, we practice gratitude, presence, and connection with the natural world that nourishes us. I've found that the way we eat reflects the way we live. If we consume food frantically while distracted by screens or rushing to the next activity, we're likely approaching other areas of our lives with the same unconscious haste. But if we can learn to eat with presence and appreciation, this mindfulness naturally extends into our relationships, work, and daily interactions. Conscious eating begins before you take your first bite. As you prepare to eat, take a moment to actually look at your food. Notice the colors, textures, and arrangement on your plate. Consider the incredible journey each item has taken to reach you, the seeds planted by farmers, the sunlight and rain that nourished growth, the hands that harvested and prepared what you're about to consume. This isn't sentimentality, it's recognition of the vast web of interconnection that makes your life possible. Place your hands over your food for a moment and offer a simple acknowledgement, not necessarily a religious prayer, but a genuine recognition of gratitude. It might be as simple as "thank you" or "I appreciate this nourishment." This brief pause creates a transition from whatever activity preceded your meal into the sacred act of conscious consumption. When you begin eating, start slowly. Place a small amount of food in your mouth and chew deliberately, noticing flavors, textures, and temperatures that usually pass by unnoticed in hurried eating. You might be surprised by how much more complex and satisfying your food becomes when you're actually present for the experience of eating it. Put your fork or spoon down between bites. This simple action naturally slows your pace and prevents the unconscious shoveling that characterizes so much of our modern eating. Use these pauses to notice your body's responses, the production of saliva, the activation of digestive processes, the gradual satisfaction of hunger. Your body is performing incredibly complex operations to transform this food into energy and cellular building materials, and you can be present for this miracle. As you eat, check in periodically with your hunger and satisfaction levels. Notice when you transition from genuine hunger to comfortable satisfaction, and eventually to fullness. This practice helps you reconnect with your body's natural wisdom about how much nourishment it needs, wisdom that gets confused when we eat while distracted or stressed. Try eating at least one meal each day in silence, or with minimal conversation. This isn't antisocial, it's an opportunity to be fully present for the experience of nourishment without the distraction of mental activity. You might discover flavors you've never noticed before, or find that you feel more satisfied with smaller amounts of food when you're actually present for eating it. Consider the energy you're taking in through your food. Fresh fruits and vegetables carry the direct energy of sunlight, transformed through photosynthesis into forms your body can use. Grains carry the concentrated energy of months of growth and maturation. Even if you eat meat, you're consuming the transformed energy of plants that nourish the animal. In a very real sense, you are solar-powered, connected to the same energy source that lights and warms our planet. Reflect on this. How does your relationship with food mirror your relationship with other forms of nourishment, emotional, spiritual, intellectual? Consider, what changes when you think of eating as a communion with the earth rather than simply fuel consumption? Notice today, how does the pace and presence you bring to eating affect your digestion and satisfaction? Your practice invitation: choose one meal each day for the next week to eat in complete silence and presence. Start with just 10 minutes if a full meal feels overwhelming. Put away all devices, sit comfortably, and practice being fully present for the colors, textures, flavors, and sensations of conscious nourishment. Notice how this practice influences not just your eating, but your general capacity for presence throughout the day. The sacred pause, interrupting autopilot. In the rush of modern life, we often move from one activity to the next without any conscious transition, like leaves blown by wind from place to place. We answer emails while thinking about dinner, drive while planning tomorrow's meetings, have conversations while mentally rehearsing other conversations. This constant mental multitasking pulls us away from the present moment and exhausts our nervous systems. The sacred pause is a simple but profound practice that creates small gaps of consciousness throughout your day. These aren't lengthy meditations or complicated rituals, but brief moments where you intentionally stop, breathe, and return to presence before moving into your next activity. Think of them as conscious punctuation marks in the run-on sentence of daily life. You can create sacred pauses using activities you already do dozens of times each day as natural reminders. Every time you open a door, pause for one breath and notice where you are and where you're going. Before you pick up your phone, take one conscious breath and set an intention for how you want to use this tool. When you get in your car, sit for a moment before starting the engine and connect with your breathing. The pause doesn't need to be long to be effective. Even 3 to 5 seconds of conscious presence can interrupt the momentum of unconscious reactivity and bring you back to choice. In that brief gap, you remember that you have options about how to respond to whatever is happening, rather than simply reacting from habit or stress. I particularly recommend the practice of pausing before transitions, before entering your workplace, before coming home to your family, before beginning a meal, before getting into bed. These threshold moments are natural opportunities to shift gears consciously rather than carrying the energy of one activity into the next without awareness. The pause can also be activated by stress or conflict. When you notice yourself becoming irritated, anxious, or overwhelmed, use this as a signal to pause rather than immediately acting on the emotion. Take 3 conscious breaths, feeling your feet on the ground and your body in space. This simple practice creates space between stimulus and response, often revealing options that weren't apparent when you were caught in emotional reactivity. Reflect, where in your daily routine do you find yourself most on autopilot, and how might conscious pauses shift these experiences? Consider, what would change in your interactions with others if you paused consciously before responding, especially in challenging conversations? Notice, how does your body feel when you move frantically from task to task versus when you transition with conscious pauses? Your practice invitation: for the next week, attach the sacred pause to 3 activities you do regularly each day, perhaps opening doors, picking up your phone, and starting your car. Use each of these moments as a gentle reminder to take one conscious breath and return to the present moment before continuing with your activity. Cultivating natural gratitude. Gratitude is often presented as something we should practice because it's good for us, like spiritual vitamins we're supposed to take daily. But authentic gratitude isn't a practice we impose on ourselves, it's a natural response that emerges when we slow down enough to actually notice the countless gifts that surround us every moment. The Tao is constantly giving, through sunlight, breath, the ground that supports our feet, the heart that beats without our conscious effort, and gratitude is simply our recognition of this constant generosity. The gratitude I'm inviting you into isn't the forced positivity that denies difficulty or the obligatory thanks that feels like homework. It's the spontaneous appreciation that arises when we truly see what's already here, the wonder that emerges when we pay attention to the miraculous ordinary events that sustain our existence. Start with your senses, these remarkable gateways through which you experience the world. Right now, light is entering your eyes and being transformed into images, sound waves are becoming meaningful information through your ears, your skin is registering temperature and texture. These aren't metaphors or abstractions, they're ongoing miracles happening in this very moment. Can you pause long enough to appreciate the gift of perception itself? Notice your body's constant, unconscious service to your consciousness. Your heart has been beating faithfully since before you were born, your lungs expanding and contracting, your digestive system transforming food into energy, your immune system protecting you from countless threats you'll never know existed. This is devotion beyond any human relationship, service more reliable than any external support system. Expand your awareness to include the vast network of support that makes your life possible. The farmers who grew your food, the countless hands that participated in creating your shelter, the infrastructure of roads and bridges and power lines that connect you to resources, the teachers and mentors who shared knowledge that serves you daily. You are held by an invisible web of interconnection and care that extends far beyond what you can see or acknowledge. True gratitude practice isn't about making lists of things you should be thankful for, but about developing eyes that see the gifts that are always present. When you walk outside, you might naturally appreciate the gift of weather, whether it's sunshine warming your skin, rain nourishing the earth, or wind carrying interesting scents to your awareness. When you interact with others, you might spontaneously appreciate their unique presence, their willingness to share this moment with you, their contribution to the texture of your day. Even challenges can become occasions for gratitude when we understand them as opportunities to practice wisdom, compassion, or strength. This doesn't mean being grateful for suffering itself, but recognizing the growth and depth that often emerge from navigating difficulty with awareness and grace. Reflect. What everyday miracles have you stopped noticing because of their constant presence in your life? Consider, how does genuine appreciation change your energy and your interactions with the world? Notice, what's the difference between obligatory gratitude and the spontaneous appreciation that arises from really paying attention? Your practice invitation, each evening for the next 2 weeks, spend 5 minutes appreciating 3 things that supported your life that day, but choose things you normally take for granted. Perhaps the chair that supported your body, the electricity that powered your devices, or the language that allowed you to communicate with others. Let your gratitude be specific and sensory rather than general and mental. As we move toward the end of this chapter, I want you to understand that these practices aren't separate disciplines to be mastered individually. They're facets of a single gem, the practice of conscious living. Each one supports and enriches the others, creating a web of awareness that gradually transforms ordinary activities into opportunities for presence, gratitude, and connection with the Tao that flows through everything. The magic isn't in perfecting any particular practice, but in bringing this quality of gentle attention to more and more moments of your daily life. You're not trying to become a different person, you're awakening to the depth and richness that have always been available in the person you already are. The Tao doesn't ask you to go anywhere special or become anyone extraordinary, it only asks you to be fully present for the extraordinary gift of this ordinary life. In our next chapter, we'll explore stories of people who have walked this path before you, who have discovered their own invincibility through the patient practice of flowing with rather than fighting against the inevitable changes and challenges that life offers us all. Their experiences will show you that what we're exploring together isn't theory or philosophy, but a practical way of living that transforms everything it touches. Parables and case studies. Let me share with you stories that breathe life into ancient wisdom. These are not mere tales, but mirrors reflecting the very transformations that become possible when we align with the Tao's gentle guidance. Each story carries within it seeds of recognition. Perhaps you will see yourself in these journeys, or glimpse the path that calls to your own heart. The fragrance of jasmine drifts through my study as I recall these encounters with modern souls who discovered the timeless art of becoming truly unbeatable. Their struggles were real, their victories profound in their simplicity. Listen with the ears of your heart, for these stories speak not just of what was, but of what can be. The businesswoman who learned from the bamboo. Sarah Chen had built her tech company with the fierce determination of a warrior charging uphill. For 12 years, she approached every challenge as a battle to be won, every setback as an enemy to be crushed. Her office walls displayed awards and achievements, yet her reflection in the window revealed tired eyes and shoulders that carried the weight of constant struggle. The crisis came suddenly, as they often do. A global pandemic shuttered offices, disrupted supply chains, and sent her competitors scrambling for survival. Sarah's first instinct was familiar: work harder, push faster, control tighter. She spent sleepless nights crafting battle plans, her jaw clenched with determination to fight her way through the storm. But storms, I have observed, care little for our fighting stance. It was her 7-year-old daughter who became the unlikely teacher. Playing in their small garden one morning, the child pointed to a tall bamboo grove swaying in the wind while nearby oak branches snapped and crashed. "Mama, why doesn't the bamboo fall down when it bends so much?" In that simple question, Sarah heard the whisper of ancient wisdom. That afternoon, instead of returning to her war room of spreadsheets and strategic plans, she found herself sitting quietly beside the bamboo, watching its dance with the wind. The stalks bent so far they nearly touched the ground, yet returned gracefully upright, unchanged and undamaged. Something shifted in the quality of her attention. The bamboo wasn't fighting the wind, it was partnering with it. The next morning, Sarah entered her office with a different energy. Instead of announcing another round of cost cuts and efficiency drives, she gathered her team in the common area. "I need to hear what you're experiencing," she said simply. "Not reports or metrics. Just truth." What emerged was a portrait of collective exhaustion. Her team had been mirroring her fighting stance, pushing through obstacles with decreasing effectiveness. But in the safety of authentic conversation, creative solutions began to surface naturally. The marketing directors suggested pivoting their product towards supporting remote work. The developer shared an idea for a simplified version that could launch quickly. The financial officer revealed cost savings she discovered through necessity rather than mandate. Sarah learned to ask different questions. Instead of "how do we force this to work," she began wondering what wants to emerge here. Instead of "what are we fighting," she explored "what are we learning." The transformation wasn't immediate, but it was profound. By yielding to the reality of changed circumstances rather than resisting them, her company found new streams of opportunity. They developed products that served the pandemic's needs, formed partnerships that would have been impossible in the old paradigm, and discovered that their team worked more creatively when trusted rather than controlled. 2 years later, Sarah's company had not just survived but flourished. More significantly, she had learned the bamboo's secret: true strength lies not in rigidity but in the ability to bend without breaking, to yield without surrendering essence, to dance with change rather than wage war against it. She kept a small bamboo plant on her desk now, its green presence a daily reminder that being unbeatable has nothing to do with never falling down, and everything to do with the grace of rising up. The artist and the empty brush. Marcus had been staring at the blank canvas for 3 months. His studio, once alive with the chaos of creation, had become a shrine to artistic paralysis. Tubes of paint lay unopened, brushes gathered dust, and the silence felt heavier each day. Success, it seemed, had become his prison. His last exhibition had sold out completely. Critics praised his masterful technique and visionary approach. Collectors competed for his pieces. Yet something essential had died in that success. The joy of pure creation had been replaced by the pressure to create something worthy of his reputation. Each morning, Marcus would stand before the easel with his mind churning through possibilities. Should he paint something profound? Commercial? Challenging? Safe? The inner critic had grown so loud that his natural creative voice had become a whisper he could no longer hear. One evening, exhaustion finally overcame his mental gymnastics. He picked up a brush, not to create art, but simply because his hand missed the familiar weight. Without conscious thought, he dipped it in water and began moving it across the canvas. No paint, no plan, just the gesture of painting without the burden of outcome. Something miraculous occurred in that moment of purposeless action. His body remembered rhythms his mind had forgotten. His hand moved with the fluidity of water, following currents of impulse that arose from a deeper source than thought. He was not painting, he was being painted through. Night after night, Marcus returned to this practice of empty brushwork. He began to understand what the ancient masters meant when they spoke of wu wei in art. The masterpiece emerges not from forcing brilliance but from becoming so empty of agenda that creation can flow through unimpeded. Gradually, he introduced color to his practice, but with the same spirit of purposeless purpose. He painted not to create something, but to participate in the ongoing creation that moves through all things. His strokes became conversations with the canvas rather than impositions upon it. The paintings that emerged from this new way of being surprised everyone, especially Marcus himself. They carried a vitality and authenticity that his previous masterpieces had lacked. Critics noted an inexplicable quality, a sense that the paintings had painted themselves through the artist's willing hands. But the true transformation went deeper than technique. Marcus had rediscovered the secret that every child knows and most adults forget: the joy lies not in what we create but in our participation in the creative force itself. He had learned to hold his skill lightly, like water cupped in gentle hands, present when needed, flowing when released. His studio came alive again, but with a different quality of aliveness. Where once there had been struggle, now there was play. Where once there had been pressure, now there was curiosity. Where once he had tried to be a great artist, now he simply allowed great artistry to move through him. The empty brush had taught him the fullness of surrender. The mother and the art of not pushing the river. Jennifer watched her 16-year-old son David struggle with math homework at the kitchen table, his frustration radiating like heat from a forge. Her every instinct screamed to intervene, to explain, to help, to fix. For years, this had been their pattern. David would struggle, Jennifer would rescue, temporary relief would follow, then the cycle would repeat. But lately, something had shifted in Jennifer's awareness. She noticed how her attempts to help often increased David's resistance. The harder she pushed toward what she believed was best for him, the more he seemed to pull away. Their relationship had become a tug-of-war where both sides were losing. That evening, after David had stormed upstairs in frustration, Jennifer found herself walking by the creek that ran behind their house. She sat on the fallen log where she often came to think, watching the water navigate around rocks and fallen branches. The creek never seemed stressed about obstacles, it simply found another way, patient and persistent, wearing away resistance through gentle persistence rather than force. What if, she wondered aloud to the flowing water, I stopped trying to push the river of David's learning and instead trusted its natural direction? The next day brought another homework battle, but Jennifer tried something different. When David grew frustrated with his algebra, instead of jumping in with explanations, she simply sat nearby with her book. When he sighed heavily, she offered quiet presence rather than urgent solutions. When he asked for help, she asked questions that guided his thinking rather than providing answers. What do you notice about this problem, she might ask. Or what would happen if you tried the approach from yesterday's lesson? The shift was subtle but profound. David began working through problems on his own, sometimes talking through his reasoning aloud. His frustration didn't disappear, but it transformed from angry resistance into productive struggle, the kind that builds understanding rather than resentment. Jennifer learned to distinguish between the times when David genuinely needed support and the times when her anxiety about his success was driving her to interfere with his natural learning process. She discovered that her son was far more capable than her worry had allowed her to see. This new approach rippled through their entire relationship. When David came home upset about friend drama, Jennifer listened without immediately offering advice. When he struggled with decisions about college applications, she asked questions that helped him clarify his own values rather than steering him toward her preferences. The most surprising discovery was how much more David began sharing with her. Without the pressure of her constant guidance, he felt safe to explore his own thoughts aloud, knowing his mother would trust his ability to find his way. Jennifer realized she had been loving David by trying to spare him from difficulty, but true love meant trusting him to develop his own strength through meeting challenges. Like the creek that carved canyons through patient persistence, she learned that the gentlest approach often accomplishes what force cannot. Their home grew peaceful in a way Jennifer hadn't experienced since David was small. Not the peace of no conflict, but the peace of trust in the natural unfolding of growth, trust in her son's inherent wisdom, trust in love's ability to guide without controlling. She still kept a small smooth stone from the creek in her pocket, its worn surface a reminder that water's gentle persistence can reshape mountains. The doctor who healed with presence. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent 15 years perfecting the art of efficiency. She could diagnose conditions with remarkable speed, prescribe treatments with precision, and move through her patient's schedule with clockwork reliability. Her colleagues respected her competence, her patients received excellent medical care, yet something essential was missing from her practice of healing. The awakening came through an encounter with Mrs. Rose Martinez, an elderly woman with chronic pain who had been shuffled between specialists for months without improvement. As Elena reviewed the thick file of test results and previous treatments, she noticed Mrs. Martinez sitting very still in the examination chair, her eyes holding a quality of resignation that seemed deeper than physical discomfort. Following her usual protocol, Elena began the standard questions about pain levels and symptoms. But something in the woman's demeanor made her pause. Instead of rushing to the next question, she found herself really looking at her patient, not at her condition, but at her. "Mrs. Martinez," Elena said gently, "how are you holding up with all of this?" The simple question opened a floodgate. Mrs. Martinez shared not just her physical pain but the fear, isolation, and loss of hope that had become her constant companions. She spoke of feeling invisible in a medical system that saw her symptoms but missed her humanity. Elena found herself listening with a quality of attention she hadn't offered in years. Something profound happened in that extended moment of genuine presence. Mrs. Martinez's pain levels, which had been consistently high, decreased noticeably during their conversation. Not because Elena had prescribed anything new, but because she had offered something medicine often overlooks, the healing power of truly being seen and heard. Intrigued, Elena began experimenting with presence as medicine. She started allowing herself to be fully with each patient, even if only for a few extra moments. She noticed that when she brought her complete attention to someone, her diagnostic intuition sharpened. Patterns became clearer, questions arose naturally, and treatments seemed more precisely matched to each individual's needs. The most remarkable changes occurred with her chronic pain patients. Elena discovered that when she offered genuine presence alongside medical treatment, healing accelerated in ways that surprised even her scientifically trained mind. Anxiety decreased, medication needs often reduced, and patients began participating more actively in their own recovery. Elena realized she had been practicing medicine as if the body were a machine to be fixed rather than recognizing each person as a complete system where emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being directly influenced physical health. Presence, she learned, was not separate from medical treatment, it was one of the most powerful healing modalities available. Her practice transformed gradually. She began taking 3 conscious breaths before entering each examination room, centering herself in the present moment. She learned to listen not just to symptoms but to the stories beneath them. She discovered that patients often knew more about their condition than test results revealed, but only shared this wisdom when they felt truly heard. Other doctors began noticing the change in Elena's patient satisfaction scores and health outcomes. Some asked about her new techniques, but Elena found it challenging to explain that the most powerful addition to her practice couldn't be prescribed or measured, it was simply the willingness to be fully present with suffering and healing alike. Elena kept a small river stone on her desk now, its smooth surface worn by countless moments of water's patient presence. It reminded her daily that healing often begins not with doing something, but with being completely present to what is. The stone held no medical degree, but it had mastered the art Elena was still learning, how to be with life exactly as it is, offering the quiet power of unwavering presence. The couple and the dance of opposites. Thomas thrived on structure and planning. His calendar was color-coded, his goals clearly mapped, his approach to life methodical and deliberate. Maria flowed with spontaneity and intuition, making decisions based on what felt right in the moment, embracing uncertainty as adventure. For the first few years of their marriage, these differences had felt complementary, even exciting. But by their 7th year together, what had once been attraction had become friction. Thomas felt anxious when Maria changed plans without warning. Maria felt suffocated by Thomas's need to organize every detail of their shared life. They had fallen into a pattern of trying to make each other more like themselves, Thomas pushing for more structure, Maria pulling toward more freedom. The crisis came during a vacation that perfectly captured their opposing styles. Thomas had researched restaurants, mapped walking routes, and scheduled activities for each day. Maria wanted to wander without agenda, to discover hidden places and follow their mood. What should have been a romantic getaway became a week of subtle warfare, each trying to prove their approach was superior. On their last evening, they found themselves sitting silently on a beach, watching waves approach the shore. The rhythm was mesmerizing, each wave different yet part of an eternal pattern, powerful yet yielding, structured yet free. In that natural demonstration of opposites in harmony, something shifted in their understanding. "What if," Maria said softly, "we're both right?" Thomas looked at her with surprise. They had spent so much energy trying to resolve their differences that neither had considered the possibility of celebrating them. That night, they began a different conversation. Instead of defending their individual approaches, they explored how their natural tendencies might complement rather than compete. Thomas acknowledged that his planning often missed opportunities for magic that Maria's spontaneity discovered. Maria recognized that her flexibility sometimes created chaos that Thomas's structure could gracefully prevent. They began an experiment in conscious collaboration. When planning trips, Thomas would research and organize the framework while Maria would identify moments for spontaneous exploration. In their daily life, Thomas would manage the systems that created stability while Maria would introduce adventures that kept their life fresh. Most importantly, they learned to see their conflicts as dances rather than battles. When Thomas felt overwhelmed by too much spontaneity, instead of criticizing Maria, he would express his need for some structure. When Maria felt constrained by too much planning, instead of rebelling, she would ask for spaces of freedom within their organized life. The transformation rippled through every aspect of their relationship. In their intimate life, they discovered how Thomas's steady presence provided safety for Maria's passionate spontaneity, while her free-flowing nature awakened playfulness in his careful heart. In their social life, they found balance between Thomas's preference for deep, planned conversations and Maria's joy in meeting new people unexpectedly. Their friends began noticing the change. Where once Thomas and Maria had seemed to be pulling in opposite directions, now they moved together like dancers who had learned each other's rhythms. Their differences, instead of dividing them, had become the very source of their strength as a couple. They learned that the secret was not in becoming more alike, but in appreciating the unique gifts each brought to their shared life. Like yin and yang, they discovered their wholeness not in their similarity but in their harmonious differences. Thomas began appreciating how Maria's spontaneity brought color to his black and white world. Maria began valuing how Thomas's steady planning created the container within which her creativity could flourish. They had learned the ancient art of dancing with opposites, finding unity not through sameness but through complementary flow. Their marriage became a living demonstration that love's greatest strength lies not in eliminating differences but in celebrating the wholeness that emerges when opposites learn to dance together. As these stories settle into the silence between us, I invite you to reflect, which of these journeys resonates most deeply with your own experience? Perhaps you see yourself in Sarah's struggle between control and flow, or Marcus's search for authentic creativity, or Jennifer's learning to trust rather than manage, or Elena's discovery of presence as medicine, or Thomas and Maria's dance with differences. Each story carries the same essential teaching, that becoming truly unbeatable requires not the elimination of challenge, but a transformed relationship with it. Like water that never fights the shape of its container yet always finds its way to the sea, we can learn to navigate life's complexities with fluid strength rather than rigid resistance. Notice how in each case, Transformation began not with trying harder but with letting go of the need to control outcomes, of old patterns that no longer served, of the belief that struggle was the only path to growth. The bamboo teaches us to bend without breaking, the water shows us how to flow around obstacles, and these modern souls demonstrate that ancient wisdom can illuminate contemporary challenges with remarkable grace. Take a moment now to breathe deeply and ask yourself, what would shift in your life if you approached your greatest challenge like Sarah approached her business crisis, or like Maria and Thomas approached their marriage, not as a problem to solve but as a dance to learn? Consider beginning your own experiment with one small area where you typically meet life with resistance. What might happen if you approached it with the curiosity of a student rather than the determination of a warrior? How might your relationships change if you offered presence like Dr. Elena, or trusted natural unfolding like Jennifer learned to do? The practice that emerges from these stories is simple yet profound. Begin each day by asking not how can I control what happens, but rather how can I dance gracefully with whatever arises. Let this question guide you into your own story of transformation, your own discovery of what it means to be truly unbeatable. Chapter 7: 30-Day Program with Practice Scripts. As I watch the seasons turn, each day bringing subtle changes that compound into profound transformation, I am reminded that true change happens not in dramatic leaps but in gentle, consistent steps. Like water carving canyons through persistent flow, your journey toward unshakable presence unfolds through daily practice, each moment an opportunity to choose flow over resistance. The path I offer you now is structured like nature itself, cyclical, progressive, yet always returning to the essential simplicity of breath, awareness, and trust. These 30 days are not a destination but a doorway, inviting you to taste the sweetness of living in harmony with the Tao's gentle current. Feel the ground beneath you as we begin this journey together. Notice how the earth supports you without effort, without strain. This is the quality of presence I invite you to cultivate within yourself over these coming weeks. Week 1: Awakening to the Flow. The first week is like early spring, when frozen ground begins to soften and the first tender shoots push through last year's fallen leaves. You are not forcing growth, you are simply creating conditions for what wants to naturally emerge. Each morning of this first week, before the world pulls you into its urgent rhythms, give yourself the gift of 5 minutes to simply breathe with awareness. Sit comfortably, perhaps by a window where morning light can touch your face. Place one hand on your heart, one on your belly, and begin to notice where your breath wants to go naturally. Don't control it, simply observe as if you were watching clouds drift across an endless sky. As you breathe, ask yourself gently, where am I holding tension that serves no purpose? Notice without judgment. Perhaps your shoulders are raised toward your ears like they're listening for danger that isn't there. Maybe your jaw is clenched against conversations that haven't happened yet. Breathe into these places not to fix them, but to offer them the spaciousness they're seeking. On Monday, your focus is simply observation. Like a naturalist noting the habits of wild creatures, notice throughout the day where you automatically resist what's happening. When traffic moves slowly, when someone speaks longer than you'd prefer, when your coffee is too cold or too hot, these tiny moments of "this shouldn't be happening" are your teachers. Don't try to change your reactions, simply notice them with curiosity. Tuesday brings gentle experimentation. When you catch yourself pushing against reality, try this. Take 3 conscious breaths and soften your shoulders. Imagine you are water encountering a rock. You don't fight the rock, you simply find your way around it. If someone cuts in front of you in line, instead of tensing against the injustice, breathe and let yourself settle into the extra minute as a gift of unexpected pause. By Wednesday, you're beginning to taste the difference between resistance and response. Today, practice the pause, that sacred space between stimulus and action where choice lives. When your phone buzzes with demands, when your child interrupts your focused work, when your partner uses that tone that usually triggers your defensiveness, pause. In that pause, feel your feet on the ground, take one breath, and ask, how can I respond from flow rather than react from friction? Thursday invites you to practice with your internal weather. Emotions, like clouds, are temporary visitors in the vast sky of your being. When anger arises, don't push it away or feed it stories. Breathe with it. When sadness appears, offer it the same spacious attention you would give a friend who needs comfort. Notice how emotions, When met with acceptance rather than resistance, move through you like wind through trees, natural, temporary, part of life's rhythm. Friday focuses on the art of receiving. Most of us have learned to push through life, to make things happen through force of will. Today, practice allowing life to give to you. When someone offers help, receive it gracefully. When beauty appears, a bird's song, light on water, a child's laughter, let it in completely. When compliments come your way, resist the urge to deflect and simply say thank you as you would receive rain after drought. Weekend practice deepens your awareness through movement. Take walks without destination, letting your body guide the direction. Notice how your feet know where to step, how your body naturally adjusts to terrain. This is Wu Wei in motion, effortless action that arises from deep listening rather than mental planning. As the first week closes, reflect on this question: what wants to flow through me that I've been blocking with busyness or worry? Write your insights gently, without pressure to find profound answers. Sometimes the most important discoveries whisper rather than shout. Week 2, cultivating flexibility. Like young bamboo that bends in strong wind without breaking, you're now ready to develop conscious flexibility, not the weakness of having no center, but the strength that comes from being rooted yet responsive. Your morning practice this week extends to 10 minutes, deepening like roots seeking water. Begin with the breath awareness you've cultivated, then add gentle movement. Roll your shoulders, turn your head slowly from side to side, arch and round your spine like a cat stretching in sunlight. Let your body teach you about flexibility, how it yields without collapsing, adapts without losing integrity. Monday introduces flexibility of perspective. Choose 3 situations that typically trigger your "this is wrong" response. Maybe it's your neighbor's loud music, your boss's communication style, or the way your family members load the dishwasher. For each situation, practice finding 3 different ways to view it. If the loud music annoys you, can you also see it as your neighbor's joy, as energy that wants to move, as an opportunity to practice acceptance? Like a gem turned in light, every situation reveals different facets when examined with curiosity rather than judgment. Tuesday works with schedule flexibility. Plan your day loosely, building in spaciousness between activities like silence between musical notes. When delays happen, and they will, practice treating them as invitations rather than intrusions. If your meeting starts late, use those minutes to breathe deeply and arrive more present. If traffic slows your commute, let it become meditation time rather than frustration fuel. Wednesday explores emotional flexibility. Choose one emotion you typically resist, perhaps anxiety, irritation, or sadness, and experiment with a different relationship to it. Instead of seeing anxiety as an enemy, greet it as information about what matters to you. Instead of pushing away sadness, welcome it as your heart's way of honoring what you've loved. Notice how emotions transform when met with acceptance rather than opposition. Thursday practices communicative flexibility. In conversations, especially difficult ones, experiment with responding to the emotion behind words rather than just the words themselves. If someone speaks sharply to you, can you hear the stress or fear underneath? If someone criticizes your work, can you receive both the feedback and care for their discomfort with conflict? Like water taking the shape of its container, let your responses match what the moment truly needs rather than what your habits automatically provide. Friday focuses on physical flexibility. Your body holds the wisdom of adaptation, muscles that lengthen, joints that adjust, posture that shifts to maintain balance. Spend time stretching not as exercise but as conversation with your body. As you lengthen and release physical holding patterns, notice what emotional or mental rigidities might soften simultaneously. The body teaches the mind teaches the spirit, all are connected like streams flowing toward the same ocean. Weekend practice deepens through nature observation. Spend time watching how natural systems demonstrate flexibility, how trees sway without breaking, how water finds every available path downward, how birds adjust their flight patterns to shifting winds. Let these observations inform your own responses to life's changing conditions. This week's reflection question: where has my rigidity protected me in the past, and where is flexibility now calling me to grow? Honor both. Rigidity often served important purposes, and flexibility is not about abandoning all structure but about choosing conscious responsiveness over automatic reaction. Week 3. Integrating the opposites. In the dance of yin and yang, you discover that life's contradictions are not problems to solve but polarities to harmonize. Like a skilled dancer who uses both strength and softness, you're learning to embrace the full spectrum of your humanity. Morning practice now becomes 15 minutes of conscious integration. Begin with breath, add gentle movement, then spend 5 minutes in what I call both/in meditation. Hold your palms facing each other, about 6 inches apart. In your left palm, imagine holding one quality you value, perhaps strength, clarity, or independence. In your right palm, hold its complement, tenderness, receptivity, or connection. Breathe between them, feeling how both can coexist without canceling each other out. Monday works with the work-rest polarity. Most modern lives swing between frantic activity and collapsed exhaustion, missing the sweet spot of sustainable rhythm. Today, practice weaving mini moments of rest into activity and gentle alertness into rest. Take 3 conscious breaths between emails. When walking, occasionally pause to notice one beautiful thing around you. When resting, stay awake to the restoration happening in your body rather than numbing out completely. Tuesday explores the giving-receiving balance. Notice your natural tendency. Are you more comfortable giving or receiving? Today, consciously practice your less developed side. If you're a natural giver, look for opportunities to gracefully receive help, compliments, or simply someone's presence. If receiving feels easier than giving, offer small gifts of attention, appreciation, or assistance. Notice any discomfort without trying to fix it. Discomfort often signals growth happening. Wednesday integrates speaking and silence. In a world full of noise, both external and internal, practice the art of conscious communication. Before speaking, pause long enough to feel whether your words arise from reaction or response. Practice saying less but meaning more. Also practice deeper listening, not waiting for your turn to talk but actually receiving what others offer. Notice how silence between words creates space for understanding to emerge. Thursday works with control and surrender. Identify one area where you've been over-controlling, perhaps trying to manage others' emotions, forcing outcomes at work, or rigidly planning every detail of your day. Practice loosening your grip, not through carelessness but through trust. Also notice where you might be under-participating in your life, and practice appropriate action. The wisdom is in knowing when to guide the boat and when to let the current carry you. Friday integrates solitude and connection. Spend part of your day in genuine solitude, not just alone but present with yourself, like a tree in a quiet forest. Later, practice deeper connection with others, making eye contact, listening with your whole being, sharing something true about your experience. Notice how good solitude enhances your capacity for authentic connection, and how meaningful connection enriches your appreciation of solitude. Weekend practice focuses on the seasons within you. Just as nature cycles through spring's emergence, summer's fullness, autumn's release, and winter's rest, you contain all these energies. Spend time sensing which season your soul is currently in. If you're in internal winter, honor the need for rest and reflection rather than forcing springtime productivity. If you're in inner summer, celebrate your creative energy without judging autumn's eventual arrival. This week's reflection question: what pairs of opposites am I trying to choose between, and how might both serve my wholeness? Remember, integration doesn't mean lukewarm compromise but dynamic balance, like a skilled musician who uses both loud and soft notes to create beautiful music. Week 4, embodying the wisdom. Like a fruit that has ripened on the tree, you're now ready to express what you've cultivated. This final week focuses on living your understanding rather than just practicing techniques, becoming what you've been learning. Your morning practice remains 15 minutes but becomes entirely self-guided. Trust what you've learned about your own rhythm. Some mornings might call for stillness, others for gentle movement, still others for breathing practices. Like a jazz musician who has learned the scales and now improvises with confidence, let your intuition guide your practice. Monday focuses on authentic leadership, not necessarily formal leadership but the natural authority that emerges when you live from your center. Whether you're parenting, collaborating at work, or simply navigating daily interactions, Practice leading through presence rather than pressure. Notice how others respond when you speak from genuine conviction rather than should-be beliefs, when you listen deeply rather than waiting to be heard. Tuesday embodies compassionate boundaries. True Taoists are not doormats, they're like rivers that carve canyons through persistent gentleness. Practice saying no to requests that don't align with your deepest values, but do so with kindness rather than defensiveness. Practice saying yes to opportunities that serve your growth, even if they feel slightly uncomfortable. Notice how clear boundaries actually create more space for authentic connection. Wednesday integrates wisdom in conflict. When disagreements arise, and they will practice staying connected to your center while remaining open to learning. Don't abandon your truth to keep peace, but don't wield your truth as a weapon either. Like water that wears smooth the sharp edges of stone, let your consistency and gentleness gradually transform challenging dynamics. Thursday embodies creative responsiveness. Instead of planning every moment, practice dancing with what life presents. When unexpected opportunities arise, pause and sense your authentic response rather than automatically accepting or rejecting. When plans change, treat the change as information rather than interruption. Notice how much energy you save when you stop arguing with reality and start collaborating with it. Friday practices integrated presence in your most challenging relationships. Choose one person who typically triggers your reactive patterns. Today, interact with them as if you were meeting for the first time, curious about who they really are beneath your accumulated judgments. Listen for what they're not saying. Respond to their essence rather than just their words. Notice how your shifted presence might invite different responses from them. Weekend practice culminates in what I call living meditation, treating your entire experience as sacred practice rather than dividing life into spiritual and mundane compartments. Whether you're washing dishes, having difficult conversations, or celebrating good news, maintain the awareness you've cultivated. Notice how ordinary moments become extraordinary when met with complete presence. As this month concludes, recognize that you haven't completed a program but initiated a lifetime practice. The techniques will eventually disappear into natural ways of being, like training wheels that fall away when balance becomes effortless. Your final reflection: how has my relationship with difficulty transformed, and what wants to emerge through me now that I'm living more aligned with the Tao's flow? Trust whatever arises. Sometimes the most profound transformations happen so naturally we barely notice them until we look back and realize we've become someone new. Like the river that shapes canyons through patient persistence, you've allowed these 30 days to carve new pathways in your consciousness. The water that flows through you now carries the wisdom of countless drops that came before, and it will nourish whatever landscapes await your continued flowing. Remember, you are not becoming unbeatable by hardening against life but by becoming so fluid that nothing can break you. This is the Tao's greatest gift: invincibility through total vulnerability, strength through infinite adaptability, victory through the wisdom of knowing when not to fight. The path continues with every breath, every choice, every moment of remembering that you and the Tao are not separate. You are the Tao expressing itself as human experience, learning to recognize itself in every face, every challenge, every ordinary miracle of being alive. Moment of reflection: what pattern of resistance have you noticed softening over these 30 days? How does it feel in your body when you choose flow over force? Moment of reflection: which of the practices from this month feels most natural to you now? How might you continue nurturing this organic wisdom? Practical exercise: choose 3 situations from the coming week where you'll consciously apply your new capacity for flexible responsiveness. Write them down, not as rigid commitments but as friendly reminders to practice what you've cultivated. Chapter 8: Completion, Integration, Commitment, and Next Steps. As I sit here beside the ancient river that has witnessed countless seasons come and go, I feel the weight and lightness of this moment, the completion of one cycle and the beginning of another. The water moves past my feet with the same unhurried persistence it has maintained for millennia, and in its endless flow, I see the perfect metaphor for what you've discovered on this journey together. You came to these pages perhaps seeking invincibility in the way the world understands it, armor against pain, strategies for conquest, methods to remain untouched by life's inevitable storms. Yet what you found, I hope, is something far more precious: the invincibility that comes not from resistance, but from perfect yielding, not from hardness, but from the supple strength of water that carves canyons through solid rock simply by never stopping, never forcing, never fighting against what is. The journey that never ends. There's a beautiful paradox I must share with you as we approach what might seem like an ending. In the Tao, every completion is simultaneously a new beginning, every mastery an invitation to deeper mystery. The wisdom you've touched in these pages, the art of Wu Wei, the dance of yin and yang, the power found in emptiness, these are not subjects to be learned and filed away like academic achievements. They are living principles that will continue to unfold their secrets for as long as you remain open to their teachings. I've watched countless students reach this point and feel a subtle anxiety arise. Now what? How do I maintain this? What if I forget these insights and return to my old patterns? Let me ease your mind with this truth: forgetting is part of remembering, losing the way is part of finding it, and returning to old patterns is often how we discover how much we've actually changed. The river beside me doesn't worry about maintaining its flow. It simply continues, adapting to every curve in its path, sometimes rushing over rocks with playful abandon, sometimes pooling in quiet stillness. Your spiritual journey is no different. There will be periods of rapid insight and transformation, and others of apparent stillness where growth happens in ways too subtle to measure. Both are perfect, both are necessary, both are the Tao expressing itself through your unique human experience. Your new relationship with challenges. Something fundamental has shifted in how you meet difficulty, hasn't it? Where once you might have armored yourself against problems or attacked them with frantic energy, you've discovered the profound power of what I call conscious cooperation with whatever life presents. This doesn't mean becoming passive or resigned. The willow tree isn't passive when it bends before the storm, it's actively preserving its life through intelligent yielding. The water isn't resigned when it flows around a boulder, it's expressing its essential nature while finding the most effortless path forward. Your challenges have become invitations to practice this same intelligent responsiveness. When conflict arises in your relationships now, you might find yourself pausing, feeling for the underlying current rather than immediately reacting to surface turbulence. When work pressures mount, you might notice yourself asking, where can I bend without breaking? How can I meet this demand while remaining true to my center? When fear or uncertainty visit, as they will continue to do, for they are part of the human experience, you might discover yourself greeting them with a strange kind of welcome, curious about what they've come to teach. This is your invincibility awakening, not the brittle invincibility of walls and weapons, but the fluid invincibility of water that cannot be grasped, cannot be broken, yet shapes everything it touches through pure, persistent presence. The gentle commitment to yourself. As you move forward, I invite you to make a commitment to yourself, but let it be a Taoist commitment, gentle as morning mist yet steady as the turning seasons. Too often, spiritual commitment becomes another form of violence against ourselves, rigid discipline that ignores our natural rhythms and human needs. Instead, commit to returning. When you notice you've been forcing instead of flowing, commit to returning to gentleness. When you catch yourself resisting what cannot be changed, commit to returning to acceptance. When you find yourself striving anxiously towards some future moment, commit to returning to the fullness of now. This returning is not failure, it's the very essence of practice. The word practice itself suggests repetition, not perfection. Even the most accomplished musician returns to basic scales, not because they've forgotten how to play, but because mastery is found in the loving repetition of fundamentals. Create small, sustainable rituals that honor what you've discovered. Perhaps it's 3 conscious breaths each morning before rising, feeling your connection to the vast breathing of the cosmos. Perhaps it's a moment of gratitude before meals, acknowledging your place in the intricate web of life that sustains you. Perhaps it's a brief evening reflection, asking yourself, where did I flow today? Where did I resist? What did both teach me? Whatever forms you choose, let them serve your remembering rather than becoming another burden to carry. The moment any practice feels heavy or obligatory, soften it, simplify it, or set it aside completely. The Tao you've touched is infinitely creative, it will find countless ways to remind you of itself if you remain open to its gentle guidance. Building your community of practice. One of the most beautiful aspects of walking the Taoist path is discovering that you're not alone in this journey. Everywhere, people are awakening to the wisdom of flow over force, presence over productivity, being over endless becoming. Your very presence, as you embody these principles more fully, becomes an invitation for others to remember their own natural way. You don't need to become a teacher or evangelist. In fact, the most powerful teaching happens through the simple magnetism of someone who has found their center. When you remain calm in the midst of chaos, others feel it and remember their own capacity for peace. When you respond to aggression with gentle firmness, you offer a living demonstration that there's another way to be strong. Seek out others who share this understanding, not necessarily those who speak the same spiritual language, but those who embody similar qualities of presence, kindness, and authentic strength. They might be found in meditation groups or hiking clubs, in community gardens or volunteer organizations, in art classes, or simply among the regular patrons of your local coffee shop who possess that quality of unhurried presence you're learning to cultivate. Share what you've discovered, but share it through your way of being rather than your words, unless words are specifically requested. The deepest teachings are transmitted through resonance, one tuning fork causing another to vibrate at the same frequency simply through proximity. The constant whisper of the Tao. As your sensitivity to natural flow increases, you'll begin to notice something remarkable. Life itself becomes your teacher, constantly offering lessons in the very principles you've been studying. The way morning light gradually illuminates your room teaches patience and the power of gradual change. The behavior of your pets demonstrates presence and acceptance. The changing seasons show you the beauty of cycles, the necessity of both growth and dormancy. This is the whisper of the Tao I want you to learn to hear, not as some mystical voice from beyond, but as the ordinary magic embedded in every moment of existence. The oak tree in your neighborhood is demonstrating rootedness and flexibility. The clouds overhead are teaching lessons about formation and dissolution. Your own breath, rising and falling without your conscious control, is a constant reminder of the intelligence that moves through you. When you face difficult decisions, learn to pause and listen for this subtle guidance. Not the chattering of your anxious mind or the demands of your ego, but the quiet knowing that emerges when you create space for stillness. Sometimes this guidance comes as a sudden clarity, sometimes as a gentle leaning in one direction, sometimes as a deep peace about waiting until the right action becomes obvious. Trust this inner compass you're developing. It's not infallible, you're still human, still learning, but it's connected to a wisdom far more ancient and reliable than the frantic problem-solving of your conditioned mind. Your invincibility awakened. And so we arrive at the heart of what you've discovered. Invincibility is not about avoiding defeat but about making defeat impossible through perfect flexibility. Water cannot be defeated because it takes the shape of any container while never losing its essential nature. It yields completely while remaining utterly itself. You are developing this same quality. Challenges that once would have broken you against their hardness now find you yielding, flowing around them, sometimes even transforming them through your fluid response. Criticism that once would have wounded you deeply now passes through you like wind through an open window. You hear it, you consider whether it carries useful information, and you let it continue on its way without taking residence in your heart. This invincibility isn't dramatic or heroic in the way movies portray strength. It's quiet, subtle, often invisible to others. But you feel it, this growing confidence in your ability to meet whatever comes with presence and wisdom, this trust in your capacity to bend without breaking, to yield without surrendering your essential self. Practical reflection moments. Take a moment now to feel into this transformation. Place your hand on your heart and ask yourself, how have I changed through this journey? What feels different in my relationship with difficulty? Notice without judgment whatever arises, perhaps greater patience, maybe moments of unexpected calm during stress, or simply a growing willingness to experiment with gentleness where you once chose force. Consider the challenges currently present in your life. Instead of immediately strategizing how to solve or overcome them, ask, how might these situations be inviting me to practice what I've learned? Where might I discover new depths of flexibility or new expressions of wise yielding? Reflect on the commitments you want to make to yourself moving forward. Let them be specific enough to guide your actions but flexible enough to accommodate the natural changes that will continue to occur in your life. A simple daily practice. As you continue your journey, I offer you this simple daily practice. Each morning, before you begin the day's activities, take 3 conscious breaths and ask yourself, how can I practice being like water today? Let whatever answer arises guide your intention, but hold it lightly, remaining open to how the Tao might surprise you with unexpected opportunities to embody these principles. The last breath and the first. As I prepare to release these words to you, I'm aware that endings, like beginnings, are ultimately illusions. The wisdom you've touched has always been your birthright. These pages have simply reminded you of what you already, in your deepest essence, know. The practices you'll continue are not foreign disciplines imposed from outside, but natural expressions of your authentic self finally given permission to emerge. The river beside me continues its eternal flow, carrying these final words toward the vast ocean that is both their destination and their source. You too are part of this great circulation, this endless movement of wisdom and love through countless forms and experiences. Go now with the confidence of water, yielding yet persistent, gentle yet ultimately irresistible. Your invincibility is not something you must achieve but something you must simply stop covering over with unnecessary effort and anxiety. It has been there all along, waiting patiently for you to remember that you are not separate from the Tao but one of its most beautiful expressions. The last breath of this book is the first breath of your deepened practice. May you flow with the current of your own true nature, bending without breaking, yielding without losing yourself, finding in each moment's perfect responsiveness the invincible strength that has always been yours. The way that can be spoken is not the eternal way, but the way you live, with presence, with kindness, with the fluid grace of one who has remembered how to dance with existence. That way speaks itself through every moment of your precious, unrepeatable life.